There is no HIPAA button. One of the biggest misconceptions I think that is out there about how medical records work is that there is just a big HIPAA button that you can hit and get all of the medical records that you're trying to get. And that is not accurate. And that is not how our medical records data works. I'm going to walk you through a little bit about that, as well as how you can protect your data and what we need to better understand about how our data is stored. Hey there, my name's Lauren. I go by L2. Yes, you can call me L2. I own a 50-state mental health practice, and I have worked in medical administration my entire career. I know these systems inside and out. This is where I eat, and I think there are giant misconceptions about how medical records work in our country. And while a lot of people may think they understand this, a lot of them don't. And then on top of that, I think the people who are making some of our biggest decisions from an administrative perspective have absolutely no idea how any of this works. Like, none. Like, shockingly none. Like, we should be embarrassed. And we are. So you might recall a couple weeks ago, there was an announcement from Health and Human Services and the buffoons parading as medical administrators that they were going to start collecting data and create a registry of people with autism spectrum disorder so that that could be shared with the researchers who are doing research on autism spectrum disorder. Okay. A couple days later, they walked that back. They have since kind of walked it to like a middle place and said, oh yeah, we're still going to get the data, but we're going to try to get it somewhere else. What? So there are a lot of theories as to why they walked this back the first time. One of which is there was huge public outcry, and talk about registries gets people really upset for good reason. Ask me about my family members who ended up on a registry during or prior to World War II, actually probably during World War II, many of whom didn't make it out alive. So yeah, those of us who are like anti-eugenics are also usually very anti-registry. So that's a thing. And I think that was like the first instinct of why they walked it back. And then the second one was they were performatively walking it back. And then what they were actually going to do is try to collect the data anyway. I think that's probably more likely. But I think the reason they performatively walked it back is probably widely misunderstood. I don't have any proof of this. Like, I don't know this, but I know this because I know these systems inside and out. I also know the people who are trying to make these decisions without any knowledge of the decisions that they're making and without any information as to how these things actually work. So to start, they said that they were going to collect medical records data to get information on American citizens who have autism spectrum disorder. Aside from the fact that this is a wild violation of our laws, our federal laws, many state laws, it is not legal in any capacity, any way. There is no issue of national security that they are trying to fight that would indicate that they need access to these records. You can't get them without individual consent. You also can't withhold compensation or services because somebody won't give that consent. Like, there's no legal way to do this. Now, that's supposing that they give a shit about the legal ways to do it, which we have pretty good information to indicate that they do not. But there is no legal way to do what they were asking for. That said, it's also probably important to point out that there is no physical way to do what they were asking for either. And they should know that. If they had any capacity to run the agency that they are running, they would know that. But they don't. So they don't. These are not doctors. These are not healthcare administrators. These are not compliance people. These are a bunch of jackass wellness grifters who are trying to sell snake oil to the American people through our most established healthcare agency with intentions of doing lots and lots of shitty stuff with it. So they don't know because they don't know, because they're not doing jobs that they are actually trained for. Full stop. But here's what I know happened, because I see this happen in my actual job just about every day. People think there is a big button you can hit that just gives you all the medical records. One button, all the medical records. That doesn't exist. We have an interoperability system, sort of, kind of. It exists a little bit, but it has never been completed. It certainly is not comprehensive. And it still to this day is voluntary. And we talk a little bit about that on the previous video about what health information exchanges are and how you participate in them, so that if you need to request that your data be removed from them, how you would go about doing that. But they're not comprehensive by any means. Not only that, they're not government databases. They are private databases that are maintained by people who own a big old server that talks to other servers. I am certain that the wellness grifter posing as the HHS secretary currently thought that he was just going to hit a HIPAA button and get all of the data for every patient in the United States who has ever been diagnosed with autism so that he can use it for his market research. Notice I didn't say scientific research. That's not what he is doing. He is doing market research so he can help more people sue vaccine companies, because that is how he makes his money. Is there a grift? He's got it. Look for the grift. You will find it. There is no HIPAA button. Every individual practice, health system, hospital system, etc., uses their own instance of an electronic health record if they use one at all. They're not required. You still can technically chart on paper. And I can't believe I'm saying this in 2025, but maybe that's the smart thing to do at this point. But you can still technically chart on paper, which means that no button is going to get access to your data. None. So for those that are using electronic health records, which is most practices, though not all by any means, not all of them are connected to one of these health information exchanges. Some of them are, but connecting to a health information exchange is expensive. It is something you have to do very deliberately. And in order to pull information down, you have to publish information back up, and your EHR has to be capable of doing that. When we started building out an electronic health record, or platforms, or the idea of moving to electronic health records instead of paper charts, when we started building that out, we did it as we do everything, which is deeply infused with capitalism. Okay? Which meant anybody could build one, anybody could sell one, and they didn't have to talk to each other. There was no responsibility for these systems to talk to each other, because in healthcare, when your systems talk to each other, you lose the ability to charge more for your services. That has been the case with medical research for a long time. It is definitely the case with medical software. And in some cases, it has been the case with hospitals and health systems too. So we are incentivized to build, but we are not always incentivized to build good integrations. For years and years and years, in order to have platforms that integrated, you had to build what was called an HL7 integration. That's not information that you need to know, except to know that it was very complicated and mostly useless, or often very useless. They took a long time to build. They cost tens and tens of thousands of dollars. Often when you launched them, they didn't actually work the way they were supposed to. Was it possible to get HL7 integration set up between two disparate systems? Yes, it was almost always possible. Did most places follow through with them? No, they were expensive, they were cost prohibitive, they were clunky, they were cumbersome. And if you were going to invest in one, you had to know that it was, one, going to be used, and two, going to save your organization a whole lot of money. There still were people who built them. There are probably plenty of them still going live or still being used today. But for a long time, interoperability existed. Sure, we can integrate with that if you can pay tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and wait 2 years for us to build it. That was the reality of building an integration. Now, when we moved from older style integrations to platforms that were built on APIs, again, you don't need to know what that is. That got better. It got easier, but it still cost money. It still took time. And for smaller organizations, it still was not always an option. Most smaller organizations are getting by with the least expensive or freest tools they can that are cobbled together because they don't have tens of thousands of dollars to invest in technology. And that is a really common problem. And it's part of the reason why you see smaller practices being bought up by larger practices, because keeping up with current technology is expensive. That being said, we have not, I don't want to say solved. Saying that we're solving that problem indicates that it's a problem. And normally, A year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have said, yeah, this is the problem. Interoperability is terrible. I don't know that that's the case anymore. I kind of like my disparate systems now. I like that nobody can get access to my system unless I deliberately give them access or deliberately pull the data out of it. I like that my providers are not connected into giant health information exchanges. But that's not the way it was designed. It was designed so that these things do talk to each other. But it is often cost prohibitive. It requires a lot of technological development. And we are far behind where we were supposed to be for quote unquote interoperability, even despite the fact that most of our EHRs are built on more modern infrastructure now. Not most, a lot of. There are still some legacy EHRs out there that are making just a butt ton of money, that are built on 6 hamsters in an asthmatic wheel, but that is neither here nor there. The point being that you have literally thousands of disparate systems that only talk to each other if you try really hard or pay a lot of money or both. And much of our healthcare or our health data is still stored in those systems, even though we have done a lot of work to create these interoperability landscapes. Some of them have been completed through health information exchanges, but not all of them. There is no one button that you can go to that everybody has access to pull medical records. And there is certainly not a button that the federal government can hit to get access to everyone's medical records. The disparate systems are a good thing in this case, because if they want the information from them, they're going to have to request it or figure out a way to get it from thousands of different systems. And good luck with that, bro. That being said, they should know this. Nobody who is running our health infrastructure in this country should be uninformed about how our data is stored or how they are allowed to access it. There is nothing in federal privacy laws that says the federal government has access to this data. Nothing. The federal government, except in very, 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 very extreme cases of national security, which would be really hard to prove for a bunch of autistic people, has no greater right to your data than any other individual in the country. Nobody. They should know that. And they did not. And so they walked it back, not because they realized, oh, hey, we're getting shockingly close to eugenics and maybe we don't want to do that, but because they realized there wasn't a button to accomplish it with. That is not who should be running our health infrastructure currently. There is no HIPAA button. We did a video before on how you can protect your data. I encourage everybody to reach out to their treating providers and find out how they plan to protect data should illegal records requests be sent out to them. At a minimum, at most, taking a step back, this shouldn't be a thing. We shouldn't have to do any of this. All of this is extra and very, very stupid. The fact that anybody has to consider this is a stupid nightmare. It is an unnecessary nightmare. That said, while we have the joy and unmitigated happiness of living in this unfettered nightmare, you can check out our previous video to figure out who you can call and how, to see if there are ways to find out how your data is being stored and what you can do to control that. And keep in mind that nobody has rights to your data if you don't give them rights to your data, meaning your health data, your medical records specifically. Consent can be rescinded. The caveat to that is if you are in a program that requires, as part of that program, to have universal access to your data, you need to find out how you can both stay in that program and protect yourself. Ask for the consents you signed. Ask for the documentation that they took from you on day one. Ask questions about what those things mean. And if they can't tell you, tell them you want to talk to their attorney or the compliance person who can explain it. And if they can't tell you, that's a problem. Let me mean it.